A priestess sat in a stone chamber, breathing toxic fumes, and spoke prophecies so vague they were never wrong. And that was the whole point. I've read the archaeological reports myself. Around 1400 BCE, the Greeks built a temple on a rocky slope in central Greece. They called it Delphi. Not because the view was good, though it was, you could see for miles across the valley. They built it there because something was seeping from the ground. A vapor. Colorless, odorless to most people, but it made you dizzy, made you speak in tongues. The Greeks didn't call it hallucination. They called it prophecy. By 800 BCE, this is documented in the historical record. Every king, general, and merchant in the Mediterranean knew one thing. If you wanted to know what the gods thought, you went to Delphi. You didn't call an email. You didn't ask your advisor. You climbed that mountain and waited your turn, sometimes for weeks. The woman they consulted had a name, the Pythia. She wasn't a philosopher. She wasn't trained in theology. She was usually a local woman, sometimes elderly, sometimes young, who sat above that fissure in the earth and inhaled. The fumes rose, her body convulsed, her eyes rolled, and then she spoke. Fragments, images, riddles mostly. The priests wrote it down, cleaned it up, and handed it to you as your answer. Here's what modern psychology would call this: inhalation of ethylene gas, maybe methane. The ancient Greeks had no word for it. They had a word for divine possession, and they lined up anyway. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. The Pythia was almost never wrong, not because she was prescient, but because she was impossibly, brilliantly ambiguous. Take King Croesus of Lydia. Around 550 BCE, I've seen this in Herodotus's account, he asked the Pythia whether he should go to war. Her answer: if you cross the river, a great empire will fall. He crossed. His empire fell. He felt betrayed. But the Pythia had never said which empire. She was technically accurate. Or consider Oedipus. The oracle told his parents their son would kill his father and marry his mother. They tried to kill him as an infant. He survived, fled his home, killed a stranger at a crossroads, his actual father, and married a widow. The prophecy came true, not because the gods controlled fate, but because the ambiguous words terrified people into actions that made those words inevitable. This is where most people get it wrong. They think the oracle was a Khan, a priest in the back room pulling strings. But I've studied enough human behavior to know she wasn't lying. She was operating in a mode of language that we've mostly abandoned. She spoke in poetry, in images, in riddles, and riddles, by definition, have multiple answers. The Greeks understood something we've forgotten in our age of certainty. They knew that ambiguity isn't a bug, it's a feature. When the Pythia said the eagle will feast on the serpent, she wasn't being evasive. She was being honest about the nature of the future. The future is ambiguous. It has texture. It contains multitudes. And here's what troubles me, having watched certainty destroy lives. Modern people crave absolute answers. We want the algorithm to tell us who to marry, the investment advisor to guarantee returns, the self-help book to promise transformation. We've built an entire culture around the fantasy that ambiguity can be eliminated. It can't. The Pythia knew what the Stoics would later formalize. You cannot control outcomes. You can only control your preparation and your response. When she spoke in riddles, she was teaching something deeper than prophecy. She was teaching that wisdom means holding uncertainty without breaking. Thousands of people climbed that mountain over 8 centuries. They didn't go because they were foolish. They went because they understood something we've mostly lost. Sometimes you don't need answers. You need permission to act anyway. You need to be told that the future is uncertain, and then you need to decide what you'll do about it. The Pythia's power wasn't in what she said. It was in what she forced you to do, interpret, take responsibility for meaning. In a world obsessed with certainty, that's radical. That's still radical. Subscribe for more explorations of ancient wisdom that speak to modern life, frameworks for thinking clearly when certainty collapses, and why the ancients were often wiser than they looked. Subscribe for new essays on ancient wisdom and how to live better, delivered every week.